I want to just clarify one thing that we said earlier, going back to record retention. The Harvey contracts, section 7.04 of those contracts, once your communities receive them, if you are also doing grant administration for them, specify that it is a 3-year record retention period. And so, again, to reiterate, that starts when the GLO closes their contract with HUD. So, we have IKE contracts that are still open. Those communities may have closed their contracts 10 years ago, but we haven't closed IKE yet. So, you will get a notice from the GLO that says, from this point forward, you have to save your records for 3 years. Just wanted to make sure everybody knows that.
All righty. And that's a good thing to know because, again, those grant years can linger and linger and linger because we recapture funds and reallocate. Just kind of FYI. All righty. Just very quickly, we're going to kind of go through the public notice process, but first, believe it or not, I'm going to make a quick phone call to our HUD rep. We were trying to figure out the best way to get her on here so she can answer the very specific question we had about, where are you? She's hiding back here. About actually doing work on your home and whether you can get reimbursed for that or if they can even start that or if that's considered choice limiting. Okay, let's test that. Can we hear you?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kelly Warner. I'm the Field Environmental Officer here in Fort Worth. And I've met many of you. Many of you I have not. But if you ever have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach me. I'm in the office 5 days a week. So apparently a question came up about whether or not a homeowner would be ineligible if they did work to their home after application. And I'm going to say yes, that would be a 5822 violation. Once they apply for the program, they shouldn't be doing any other work to their home until the environmental review is complete. Not only would that be a violation, but it also just doesn't make sense from the homeowner's perspective, right? Like, there's a high chance that depending on what work needs to be done to their home, that their home could be rehabilitated, but most likely in a lot of circumstances, depending on the amount of damage, it could be reconstructed. And, why would you want to put money into a home that is just going to be knocked down anyway? So, yes, it should be communicated to the homeowner that once they apply for the program, they are to be doing no other work to their home until they're either accepted or denied for the program. Did that fully answer the question?
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
All right, we got a yes. Hold on a second. All righty. That's our super high-tech way of letting you get that answer. So again, just remember, and honestly, it makes sense from the perspective of you don't know what's going to flip that home from rehab to reconstruct, and if they've put money into that home, they're not going to get reimbursed for it, okay, especially if it goes to reconstruction. So you don't want to go there. But at the same time, again, it is a 5822 violation. They don't want you doing anything. So if you're doing that homeowner reimbursement program, likely you've already done whatever it is to your home, but if you're doing something at that point, again, remember, once you make that application, we're asking you to stop. You're to be reimbursed for certain things. It also goes back to a lot of other complicated things that goes with what the builder's estimates are. We don't want to pay them for everything if you did 20% of the work or 30% of the work. So just remember, that kind of begins to make things complicated. So it's better to just, the moment they put that application in, it's stop work. Don't do anything else. Okay? All righty. So we're going to keep on going. We're going to get into the public notice and request for release of funds, and I know everybody's familiar with that, and yet we still have problems. So we're going to go over that a little bit very quickly. Alrighty, there's 3 types of public notices. There's that notice of intent to request release of funds. There's the finding of no significant impact, and I love that they make it like it's a third one. There's actually the combined notice that actually puts those 2 pieces together. Just to kind of give you a quick idea of what those comment periods are for this. When you publish, it's the straight comment period. If you post, you always add 3 days on to the local comment period. So for a categorically excluded subject to project, when you are publishing, there's a 7-day local comment period that has to ensue. After that happens, you turn in that request for release of funds to us, and then begins the federal objection period. The federal objection period, no matter what, whether you publish, post, whether it's categorically excluded or an EA, is always 15 days. The change always comes with the local comment period. So again, if it's categorically excluded, it's 7 days for that local comment period. If you decide to post locally, then it's going to be 10 days because we add 3 days onto it for posting. Or we don't, but HUD does. If it's an environmental assessment, then up front will be 15 days for that local comment period. If you're posting, again, you add 3 days, so that becomes 18 days. So one of the other pieces that we kind of see, or we don't see, and that's the problem, are the interested parties. You've got to make sure to keep that list of the interested parties, and you've got to have proof that you actually sent it out, something out to them. So be that if you are faxing, I don't know that anybody faxes that much anymore, but if you are, you want that return receipt or that listing that shows who all you faxed out to, you can do that little return receipt for your email. So if you're attaching that document to that, you've got that other piece that shows you that you've done this. If you want to spend a lot of money, I guess you could always do that return receipt and mail it to them. But I don't know who does that anymore. Just remember, some of the pieces that we're talking about are your local news media. Every once in a while, maybe they'll actually publish for you. Any kind of appropriate tribal, local, state, and federal agencies. If there's wetland or wildlife impacts, be sure that you send that out to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and likely also Texas Parks and Wildlife as well. Don't forget them. Environmental groups with any kind of known interest in the area. So if you've got people that contact you all the time, those are interested parties, okay? And we're giving you some examples here, but this is not the end-all be-all. We don't know who all your interested parties are. Let me make that very clear. You're going to send it out to any kind of regular oversight agencies with known interests in the area. So maybe if you're working in a floodplain, you're sending something to FEMA. You're sending something to the floodplain manager. Region 6 for EPA, although they're generally looking for things that are at the level of an EA. One thing that I will comment on is that for the General Land Office, if you're doing any kind of coastal zone review, if you're actually using what we have in place, which is that MOU that we did, if you're utilizing that, please do not send them the piece to review. They're always going to assume that if you're sending something to them, that it's something that they've got to do something with. So they've asked us that if you're actually using the programmatic agreement, that you don't send it to them. Don't make them one of your interested parties.
I wanted to add something to ROF.
Oh.
So I wanted to add something onto the request for release of funds based on what we see some common problems are at GLO when we receive them. So just a reminder that the ROF needs to be signed by the certifying officer at least 1 day after the end of the comment period. You are? Mm-hmm. Oh, never mind. Cynthia's going to cover all this. I thought this was our last chance for ROF. No. Okay, never mind. We'll get into all the details of the ROF then in a minute. Okay, thanks.
I was going to say, if anybody's been to my training, they know I'm very psycho about this stuff. Anyway, I wanted to kind of go into those comment periods. But again, another person that you're going to be sending to, again, is Region 6 EPA. And for you on here, they've got the actual address and information for you. As you can see, they've got an email for Houston. I like that. Robert Houston. Okay, publication versus posting. So you've heard me mentioning posting. This only goes for these specific notices. You can't do posting for floodplain, just FYI. So you publish your FONSI or your request for release of funds, your combined notice, in a newspaper with general circulation. It doesn't always have to be the most expensive newspaper out there, so you're not using the Houston Chronicle. If they have another newspaper that's of general circulation, you can utilize that, okay? So that you're not spending all the money in the entire world on those things, because I know they're very expensive. The posting, if you're going the posting route, you do need to have those prominently displayed in public buildings within the project area, which is a little bit of a change, because in the past, HUD's made us do it all over town. Try doing that in Dallas. They posted in 80 spots. So now they're talking about prominently displayed in public buildings within the project area. We generally look at within the city itself, maybe City Hall, something that's out that way. It could be a library that's owned by the city. One of those avenues that you can obtain an affidavit to prove that you posted. Publishing and posting must be done in a manner consistent with the RE's citizen participation plan. So if the locality has one, you need to follow what that is, what that process is. Timing and counting days, okay? See, I promise it was in there. Because this makes me crazy. And I love that some people have tried to automate this. It never works. Trust me, don't do it. Don't do that on your computer. Inevitably, you'll end up with some date that falls on a weekend that shouldn't. So, for the counted in calendar days, okay, that's exactly what we're looking at. You're counting out in calendar days. So, the first day of that time period begins at 12:01 a.m., okay, local time on the day following publication or posting, okay? So that's how that time period starts, and I'm sorry I keep saying okay. So as you're doing this, there have been many times, I know I've been on travel and I'm trying to get something out, and I just happen to be traveling with my certifying officer. Got her to sign it and got it in, faxed out from that La Quinta or wherever the heck we were, and got it in at 11:55. I'm good to go because it was received by HUD. At that time and stamp date at that time, so my comment period started the very next day, okay, which was like 10 minutes later. But again, that's what you're looking for. So the RE starts counting the day after publication. I'm going to show you a little calendar to kind of take you through what I'm talking about, because this is where we seem to lose things. When you begin a comment period, that can start on the weekend. It can start on a holiday. The publication can start on a holiday. It's when it ends that it has to end on a business day, okay? And it rolls forward, not backwards. Always remember that. So if the last day of a comment period falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or a holiday, you roll forward. It's going to be that next business day. The RA may extend any kind of comment periods for any reason, by the way. So if there's some type of very big controversy over whatever it is that we're working on, we may decide to do a 30-day comment period rather than a 15-day comment period. And that may sound like, oh my God, no, not 30 days, but many times that works to your benefit. It's a better thing to do to allow people that time to comment. So we can work that out. The RE signs and submits that request for release of funds after the last day of the comment period. The RE, and the RE we're looking for is the certifying officer, and the certifying officer is not the secretary. Okay, the certifying officer is somebody that's appointed within, and they have to be somebody in a decision-making role, okay? Has to be somebody that for that community could actually sign contracts or go to court and represent them. So again, not the city secretary. If it's doled down to the community development manager in that section, it needs to be done by action. So it has to be done by city council or by the county commissioner's court. They have to have appointed that particular person as their certifying officer. What I will suggest sometimes is that you appoint that position rather than that person's name. Okay, because we do know that sometimes if you're appointing the city manager or their person that's right below them, the assistant city manager, you want to make sure that you appoint that position rather than the person, because those change out and you don't want to have to keep doing council action for that. Believe it or not, that is one of the things that we'll look for when we monitor. If we see a brand new name coming in, we may ask you to submit that to us. I've had to submit that a few times to HUD for our certifying officers. So again, that has to be somebody in a purposeful role. And that is the person that has to sign the request for release of funds, not somebody else in their stead because they're on vacation. So if you need to appoint a couple of people as certifying officers, that's fine, because people get sick and people go on vacation. Okay, and just to kind of point out, again, because I want to make it crystal clear, because, by the way, when we talk about the local comment period and the federal objection period, the two pieces, the local comment period, they can object to anything, okay? They don't like the way it looks, it's located over there, whatever thing that they come up with that they want to object, and we have to respond to them. However, on the other side, for the federal objection period, they have to object on specifics, okay? You didn't do the proper steps in putting this all together. When you sign that request for release of funds, part of what that is are certifications saying that I have completed my environmental review, it is complete and done, and I have made a finding of no significant impact, okay? You're certifying that you've met all your requirements, you've published, you did your proper local comment period. You posted where you're supposed to post or published where you're supposed to publish. All the mechanisms that are required have been done properly. So during that objection period, if something wasn't done properly, that's their time to object. So if you shorted the local comment period, they can see that when they look at your posting, because we post the dates on there. That's part of what goes on to your publication. They can look at that and realize that you've left off a day. Now I can object. And so what they can do with that objection is force you to republish. Okay, or they can object about something else that they wanted, maybe they don't want that. Maybe it's kind of a not in my backyard kind of thing. So this gives them an opportunity to slow you down yet again. So keep that in mind. Publication can be very expensive. You don't want to have to do that. So watch your dates. This is why I want to bring this up. Alrighty, when we look at this, if I'm publishing, everything, by the way, always happens and starts the day after. And you're going to hear that all over and over again. So as you begin, I published on the first of whatever month this is. My first day of the comment period begins the day after. So that begins on the 2nd. You count out 1, 2, 3. I'm pretending this is NEA, by the way. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So my last day of the comment period is this. There's an actual portion on there when you're doing the combined notice that tells what the last day of the comment period is. So if somebody's looking at that and you listed on your comment, on your thing that it's this day, you're now a day short and now they can object, okay? When we submit this, when it comes to us, we're also going to object because we're going to make you republish the moment we see that. If we submitted that to HUD would do the same. So that's why we've got to step in and do that. So your last day of your comment period is the 16th. The first day that you can actually submit the request for release of funds and or sign the request for the release of funds is the day after the last day of that comment period. And I'm very, very hard on that because I have people that submit things early. They want to get going and go quick. Well, your date, for whatever reason, you've now dated it back over here on the, the 6th because you already published, you're hot to get it in, so you've sent that to us. Thanks for sending it to me, but now I've got to send it back to you because I cannot accept it until that date, okay, the 17th. The date that it's signed on there by the certifying officer cannot be dated any sooner than the 17th, okay? Keep that in mind. If it's dated anything else, we're going to throw it back at you and you're going to have to resubmit it. So once I've received it and it happens to be on Friday, it's okay. The very day after that, we're going to start the federal objection period. Things can come in. It's okay if it comes in the mail over the weekend because we're still going to look at it on Monday. That's why it's okay. So you begin on that on the 18th and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, my 15th day is about to hit on the 1st of this following month. Well, I can't make that last comment, the last day of the comment period fall on a weekend because no one's there to get the mail, okay? So it ends up rolling forward and it is now the 3rd. So they have until 5 o'clock that day or whatever the last hour of business is for us to get that into us, or if they're making an objection. So they've got till the 3rd, which means if we get no objections up to this point, the day after, the 4th, is the first day that we can provide that authority to use grant funds, that release of the funds. So just kind of so you can get that idea of the timing in your heads, because a lot of times people are ready to go, well, here's our stuff and we're going to start, when do I get the AUGF? Well, you'll get it in 33 days. Okay, once you publish, it's a 33-day process. If we're utilizing some of the other things that we've talked about in the past for those condensed comment periods, those are really for emergencies, and we're kind of really far down the road on like 15, 16 for emergency, just so you'll kind of understand where we're at with this. But I want you to kind of build that into where you are when you're going to be letting contracts, when you're wanting to close on property, when you're trying to move forward with somebody's project. This is what you're looking for, okay? And if you're tiering, this is the first piece. You still can't go forward because you've got to get that site-specific in. Maybe you identified 3 homes while you were waiting for the authority to use grant funds. Now you've got to submit that site-specific in, and once the clearance comes for the site-specific, then you can proceed. Okay, so never get that kind of mixed up. The authority to use grant funds grants it for that particular property or that swath of land that you're doing the review on, say if you're doing eminent domain buyouts. Okay, so you know you're doing this particular piece, and so you're defining that one piece of property or that one area of the neighborhood that you're going to go after. Once that clearance comes in, you're good to go environmentally for that, okay? Even though it's called a release of funds, we're not really releasing anything. We're just saying environmentally you're allowed to move forward. As far as releasing and what you're supposed to be doing programmatically, talk to your grant managers. There are other pieces of the pie that you've got to get going and taken care of before you proceed. Alrighty, so again, just to kind of touch base, if there's any kind of controversy or something else that's going on with those projects, we can extend the comment period to be actually 30 days for that local comment period. And again, HUD's always going to be 15 days on the other side of that.
Cynthia, can I add something?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to make a comment. I know she's about to, that's my favorite slide. She's about to go into some other details, but this timing ROF AUGF public comment period is extremely important, and it is really a paper exercise. We're counting dates. It really has nothing to do with environmental. However, we're involved by default in this process for the NEPA process. And why it's important is Josh Jackson at the back of the room, him and I worked on a project that went to litigation because of something very similar to do with all the dates. The county that did not want this project hired a law firm out of California to pick apart our ERR, including public comments, public notices, dates, and they combed through everything. And so if you think it's probably not something there's ever going to be controversy over, or not something anybody's really going to notice or take interest in, if the project isn't wanted by a community, they will find it and they will go through it page by page. So it just heads up on that. The importance of this is critical, and from an environmental standpoint for our team, and Cynthia did touch on it already, I'd just like to back her up and emphasize that a lot of the times we'll get in an ROF that's signed 5 days before we get it. And that may have been fine as it worked in the process of timing. However, we can't accept it until we actually receive the ROF. So if it's signed 10 days ago, had they sent it to us when it was signed, that's fine. But our 15 clock for the AUGF starts when we get the ROF. Yeah. So that's important too. So just because a certifying officer signs it, until we receive it and date stamp it with the email and signature, we don't actually start our 15-day before we release the funds. So just a reminder on that. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
That's a key word, receipt. If we haven't received it, and that's true. Many times I've had people going, but it's supposed to be released. It says there on the notice. Well, it says on the notice, but you waited 30 days before you submitted to us. So it's the date of receipt that begins that process. We've got to have it in there and acknowledged. Same thing with HUD. That's why I was saying, I've done that thing where I had to fax it in at, 11:53, p.m. from a La Quinta and I don't even know where, East Texas. To get that started, but that's because I had to have it on record to them, and they had that through that email with it stamped, time-stamped, and dated, so they knew exactly when that was submitted, so they had evidence of submission. So again, that's again why we look at that. So even though it has dates on that notice, if you don't follow through with those dates, if you don't submit it on time, it's not starting the clock for you. The clock starts when we actually receive it. So just some quick pointers as well for the public notices, and she said this is her favorite slide because she just likes that dog in the slide. Just thought I had to mention that. We're very animal centric in our division. So anyway, so be sure and use the HUD recommended formats. Please, please, please. Don't wordsmith them. There's specific templates. Remember that HUD Exchange thing I showed you? It had formats that talked about the forms, but it also had the samples, and I love that it calls it samples because it's really what it is. It's the publication template. And the template is laid out in there, and there are certain spots that it will actually highlight for you to change out and put your correct information in. For the rest of it, do not change it. That's a template. There's specific things that have to be in that notice, and we'll be looking for those when we review that. If you remove it, we may have to ask you to republish. And again, that's more money and that's more time, and we want to get rolling, so please be sure that you don't kind of wordsmith any of the other stuff. Make sure that the description you have on there is succinct, but explains enough so that anybody picking that up knows what the project is, okay? So be sure and triple check the dates, okay? You just heard her talk about what they were doing with that, and believe me, we've seen that time and time again. Triple check the dates before publishing or posting, including any kind of submission dates to us, okay? There are 2 dates. There used to be 3 dates on there, and I know that some of our other colleagues over here like to put that 3rd date still. First date that's up there, well, 3 dates. There's the date at the top that should correspond to exactly the date that you publish because it's your publication date. In that first paragraph, that's the date that you're planning on submitting to HUD. So it's that request, wait, let me go backwards. It's that request for release of funds date, the 17th. The 3rd date that's on there is the last day of the comment period. You're telling them under the comment periods you're accepting until the 16th at 5 p.m., okay? So they can submit stuff till that time period. Let me go back, whoops. So again, we're working through those dates. The last date that used to be on there used to be the date that they expected the last day of the federal objection period to happen. Instead, HUD has now changed that to within 15 days of receipt of the request for release of funds, which is probably smarter because it doesn't cone you into that date. However, I do know a lot of people like to still put that piece in there, but make sure you have it a correct date if you're doing that. If you want to, you can always add a couple of days just to give yourself some cushion for when it's submitted. But again, that just kind of, I know a lot of people do that because they want to allow people to understand when that ends, when exactly it's going to happen. Describe the project fully and concisely, including any kind of significant environmental issues and their mitigation. For publication and posting, for posting, you can write everything in God's green earth on there because you're posting. It's going to be the same. For publication, you can keep it a lot more succinct, but you need to refer back to the environmental review record if they want to know more information about that mitigation, okay? When it comes to submitting the request for release of funds, you will tell us everything about mitigation that you're doing on that project, and it's going to come back to you on the authority to use grant funds. We like to keep all that information on there, and HUD asks for that. Be sure to use common language, okay, for the project description and for the project location. So don't give us latitude and longitude, although I guess you could on the request for release of funds. We kind of like that. But use like an actual address, or give us, it's 500 yards from the intersection of blah, blah, blah on the west side of such and such street, rather than parcel number, yada, 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 and, lot this, block number that. The normal person's not going to go hunt up the CAD and try to figure out how to do that. So they need to know an actual address if they'd like to comment. The notice needs to provide the RE's address. So you need to make sure your address is in there. You also are going to have an address that's going to submit to HUD. If we're standing in for HUD, which we will be doing for probably the majority of you, you'll have the GLO's address. Okay, we've got a specific address that we've filled out and put into that piece. And remember that request for release of funds got to be signed by the certifying officer once it comes into us. So we're in completing the ROF, make sure to include, okay, we're going to go into that really quick, the name of the recipient if it's different from the grantee. So if you're actually doing, say, a multifamily project, the recipient's name should be on there as well. Who is actually doing this project? If it's, Joe Bob's Construction Company or LLP or whatever, they go down as the recipient. And you are the RE, say you're City of Houston or City of Austin or City of whoever. Location of the project goes in box 10. Do not put the RE or the recipient's address. A lot of people do that. We're actually asking for the actual project location. And it should include the county as well. We want to know which county. Even though you're looking at it going, everybody knows Houston's in Harris County. Well, mostly. A little piece of you in Fort Bend too, right? But even though it's something that we realize when somebody's coming in to audit and they're coming in from Washington, D.C. or Detroit or Denver or where many of our other offices are located for HUD or from the OIG, they don't know where we are. I've actually had somebody that didn't realize that El Paso was not on the coast because they don't know Texas. To us, yeah, it's funny. To them, no idea. I mean, would you know where Elizabeth, New Jersey is? I only do because that's where my mother-in-law's from, okay? And it's a port city, so I do know that it could be along some little zone over there. Otherwise, I really wouldn't know. And it's the same thing for them. The name sounds familiar because unfortunately they've heard it on the news lately, but they don't know where it's located. So again, that's why we always have all this information. Complete that project description, put the schedule. It will be developed over the next 3-year period, so if you want to kind of give them a timeline of when that's going to happen. Make sure you have that total and estimated project cost. Make sure you include your mitigation. Include any kind of required conditions, and that's what we're talking about, that mitigation. So if you're having to, you're doing a rehab and there's lead-based paint, you're going to talk about how you're going to follow the proper procedures for that. If you are elevating the home, you're going to talk about the fact that you are going to elevate it 2 feet above base flood elevation, or, and again, better be checking with those local floodplain administrators, maybe they have a higher level that they require locally, and if so, that's what you're elevating to, and you'll tell us, I'm actually elevating to 3 feet above base flood elevation per whatever locality's requirements. So include those pieces in there. Certifying officer, again, signs it. The recipient, if they're not the RE, we also like to have that signature on there. They need some skin in the game. The RE must make a copy of the ROF available to the recipient as well. And by the way, if it's not the certifying officer that signs that request for release of funds, as you can see back here, that's a basis for objection. So don't have the city secretary sign for so-and-so that's on vacation. They're just going to have to wait till he gets back to sign. RO certifying officers environmental certification. When they're signing that, these are the things that they're certifying to, okay? Like I said, the ROF contains several certifications on there. And again, it's fully carried out the review and decision-making and action pertaining to the project. So this is not a paperwork exercise. When we're asking for things like alternatives, the person that's performing that environmental review can only look to so much of that, but they need to turn to the actual locality itself, whoever's applying for this, to find out exactly what those are. They don't know, and they can't make up a story for you. You need to know actual alternatives, what it is you're going to be doing, because once this comes in, we actually expect you to do it, and we'll be monitoring to make sure that you did meet all those conditions. Has compiled and will continue to comply with NEPA, environmental procedures, permit requirements, statutory obligations for 58.5 and 58.6, and applicable state and local laws. Based on consideration of adverse effects, has made a finding as to whether or not an EIS is required. That's another piece that we're actually certifying to. It's on that second page where you say yes or no. They've issued a public notice. The notice was disseminated and published. So we want to make sure that you actually did hand it out to those interested parties. Attached evidence of publishing, posting, and or mailing. Believe it or not, back in the day, they apparently used to mail. I've never seen that. You're welcome to if you'd like to mail out to people as well, but you don't have to. Certifying officer certification also has compiled with dates all statutory and regulatory time periods for review, comment, other actions. I mean, this is all part of that certification that you're signing. And I'm going to keep on going. And notice the fine print. Warning, HUD will prosecute false claims and statements. Convictions may result in criminal and or civil penalties. And they actually have had some. I don't know if I'm subscribed to that OIG thing. So I get a lot of the things that come in and tell us about different people who have been prosecuted for various misdeeds, including how they handled grants. Both at the locality themselves, at the state, and with various programs. I know I've seen a lot of stuff come in for Sandy. The objection period. Again, we talked about it being a 15-day objection period. And I'm going to kind of skip through this because we kind of know this and you know this. That's when you get to dig. Alrighty, so we're going to jump into how to submit a review request or a request for technical assistance. Did you want to do this one?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, ma'am. Wait, she's got to record you. It's all about recording.
So they were using expedited reviews. There was a HUD memo that came out earlier this year for the expedited reviews. Is that still being used for certain projects?
To some extent, yes. And we'll kind of talk about that probably like on a case-by-case basis. So you can request and talk to us about it, and we'll let you know whether we think it's appropriate or not. Oh, the
When they're combining the ROF and the public and the state comment periods are combined.
Are you still wanting to do that?
Yeah, so about that.
We had this conversation before, can you tell?
That is available for use with caution. We have seen it go wrong in I would say most circumstances. It's used incorrectly in some way, and republication is required. So it is an option if it's something that you guys, people who have been doing this a long time, want to talk to us about and what the procedure is for that. Come talk to us at lunch. Or at a break, and we can provide you more guidance on that. I don't want to throw it out to everybody because this regular process is complicated enough. It does save 15 days here and there, but is it worth it if you end up having to republish? I'm not sure. So if you don't mind tabling that, and if you want to talk to us at the lunch break, we're happy to discuss it with you.
Okay. Tell them if they have a chance, they can also email.
Yes, that's true. And if we get caught up with other people at lunch or after the break, the training, feel free to email us. Our contact information is at the beginning as well as the end of the slides. So, okay, I'm going to move on to how to submit a request review and review for technical assistance. And so there's a lot of people in this room currently working on programs with us and submitting things to us. So please, business as usual for everything that's going on right now. And what we are working on developing internally, and we have it already, is called Tiger, and that's like our interactive database where the grant management team puts things and where we're going to be putting our environmental. It is not currently up and running for all of our programs as we speak. So for now, everybody business as usual that's submitting things for us. Moving forward, we will be using Tiger for everything. That's our goal. We're testing certain enhancements now so that we're making sure it works and that when you all submit something to us, it doesn't fall through the cracks. It's not, what? Oh, it is, perfect. Okay, great, thank you, Cynthia. So yes, we'll go into the next slide, as Cynthia said, we'll go into Tiger, to Tiger.
And the other one's going to be Outlook.
Yes,
Whichever one you prefer to start with.
I'll go Tiger first. Yeah, perfect. So eventually when we do use Tiger, you will be having, there's 2 areas to Tiger. Going to keep it very high level, portal and production. Some of you may have production licenses. Some of you may not only have portal regardless. You're going to submit it. Tiger will generate an automatic email notification to the environmental team, which we'll receive. I'll receive that to an inbox that we have created for that, and I will assign it to a GLO project manager. And that project manager will then get into contact with you about your specific review. And the important thing, Christy's going to talk a little bit about Tiger a little bit later, so I just wanted to briefly mention it. But what I really wanted to touch on in this slide is that when we first started this program, probably about 1.5 years ago with the new environmental team that's here, we were encouraging everybody to submit their preliminary drafts of everything. The preliminary draft of the EA or CST, the ERR, the floodplain notices, so that we could review it and get it back to you in hopes that that's helpful, that it doesn't require you down the road to republish. However, moving forward, and with the amount of disasters we're working with now, our team, as you can see, is right here. There's not very many of us, and we're working 2015 projects, 2016 projects, Harvey, and we're also going to be doing mitigation funds as they become available probably within the next 6 months. So we are dealing with 48 counties across the state, and it's a high volume, large request for reviews. So with that said, we are asking for submittals to be complete when they're submitted to us for review requests. If you're not comfortable with that, the alternative is using requesting technical assistance, which is a different email, which I'll go over on the next slide. So for what that means for you all is, what is a complete ERR? So when you're finally ready to submit an ERR for our review, this slide lists out exactly what we want to see in that ERR, what we consider complete. So it has to be basically everything except the AUGF, which we will issue. So that means it includes all your floodplain notices, the right form, all letters, consultation that's finalized, not pending. We won't be able to sign off on it if you have any consultations that are outstanding. So basically everything has to be finished. Again, a reminder that the HUD form you're using has to be signed by the certifying officer. We see that a lot. That's a lot of the reasons we send stuff back. Unfortunately, when it gets out of our queue and we have other things in front of it, you go back into our queue. We just have so much coming in, and it's every project and every submittal is treated equally. So it doesn't matter if you send us an email that says we need to publish tomorrow. You're going to go in line with everybody else, and we'll get to it when we can. So with that said, please take time to look through this slide and remember what exactly we're asking for and that we want to be able to expedite it. The next slide, if you're not comfortable with that, giving us a complete package, everything finalized and done, and you would like technical assistance or just our approval on things that you're wanting to make sure are done correctly and that don't hold you up in the end, this is going to be the email that you're going to send it to, which is ENV reviews at that extension. And a lot of you right now are using that for your submittals. When Tiger is up and running, there's going to be 2 separate ones. So at that time, all of your technical assistance questions are going to come here. So if you have technical assistance, if you're not sure about project classification, especially if you're going to adopt, remember we talked earlier about adopting the federal reviews. So if you have a federal review that you think covers your project area and you don't want to have to do any environmental, send that to us through this. We'll look at it and then we'll correspond with you directly. Again, the early and final floodplain notices, if you want us to review them before you publish, and the NOI, the notice of intent and the request for release of funds, as well as the FONSI as well. We're happy to look at all of those things. I gave an example of here what's really helpful if you put in the subject line for us, because when I receive in those technical requests, I'll send them to the appropriate person. Celine is our historical preservation person. David does archaeology. I typically do wetlands and endangered species, so it's very helpful for what information you can give us as it relates to that. One important thing, with that regards to subject line, a House Bill 3175 came out, was it last month, the month before? It was within the last 6 weeks or so. Has to do with protection of personal data. So moving forward, and not everybody does this, but a lot of our housing programs we're currently working in have certain procedures and protocols where we're actually requiring the subject, we used to require the subject line to include the name and person's address, so we were sure we had the right application, we could find it in our system in Tiger. We're not allowed to do that anymore. So we can't have anything in the subject line with anybody's personal information. So name, house number, street number, telephone. Social Security is really bad. I don't know why you would have that information anyway, but yeah, definitely don't put that in any sort of subject line. And so I think Christy Morris, for the people currently working on our housing programs, she sent out an email on the workaround for submittals of HAP for HAP and reimbursement homes. And so if you have not received that email from her, or you're currently working on other housing programs and you need more guidance, her presentation will be up here shortly, and she can help you out with that. As I said, when we do, when we do roll this out and we switch into the Tiger reviews versus the ENV reviews, which are now everything, we'll let everybody know. So until that time, continue to move forward with how business as usual. Yes, Sam?
Does that, for the personal applicant data for like the infrastructure projects, if the applicant's just the city, does that count?
No.
Or is that just private?
Yeah, that's
citizen?
fine.
Okay.
Yeah. The city name or the county name and the email address is fine. Any other questions about this or anything else we've covered so far?
You're so quiet.
Yeah.
I swear we're going to feed you really soon.
Yeah, that's true. Lunch is coming. Wesley, did you have a question?
I did.
She's got to record you.
Yeah, stand by.
Hi. This actually goes back to when you were talking about the letters, the notice to interested parties, and you said that we could email those out. What if we?
Have a return receipt.
What if they don't respond? What if they don't even click that they read it?
That's up to them.
Okay.
You have notified them.
All right.
Wait, I've got to answer over here because I've got to record. The purpose of that is for you to distribute it to them. They have the option to read it. If they don't want to read it, we can't force them to, okay? So it's all about having the evidence that you did it, okay? Again, remember, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So you've got to have evidence to show whoever monitors you or drops in to provide a little TA, or if HUD OIG drops in to look around, that you actually did this, okay? That's the whole point of it. And we also like to have like that compilation list at the front of your stuff to tell us who you
Distribution
contacted.
list?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just helpful to have that. Which, by the way, on this, to kind of go back to this a little bit, if you are already working with somebody that's reviewing your request and we're talking to you about doing a publication, or they've already okayed you to go ahead and publish, we've literature review, you've made these changes, this all looks great, now time to publish, you don't necessarily have to go straight through this again to submit the FONSI for review. Go ahead and work with that person that you're already working with. If it's me, if it's Angel, if it's Jill that's done your review and has asked you and said, it's okay for you to publish, and you say, can you take a peek at it first? Send it directly to us. That way it's not coming in through this portal and she's not having to dig through and figure out who goes to who. Okay?
I'm sorry. I wrote that down to talk about. Yes, please. So, as our team is very small and we have hundreds of reviews coming in, just pick one of us. Usually, a lot of the times we see emails coming into all of us. And so, really just one of us needs to handle things. And when it comes into, if you just send it to ENV Reviews, I will send it to that one person, and then all communication can just be between them off-site, not copying ENV Reviews, because we keep that specifically just for the submittals. Thank you.
Otherwise, we make Jill insane, and she's trying to catch up on those environmentals because she's trying to make sure of what's coming in. If for any reason something that you're submitting through that is large, always remember to put in 1 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4, but with the appropriate piece that's up on the top so that they know it's all part of a review. Because again, she's going through hundreds of emails that are coming in, so she's got to make sure she's because we're dropping it down into a specific system for each one of us to access. It's our SharePoint. So when she assigns that to me, to Angel, to Celine, to David, we get that link to it and go in there to get the appropriate documents. So we want to make sure we have all your documents together. So just kind of a FYI.
You mentioned Box for large files.
No. I'm kidding. And of course, we have Box, just like what you utilized to pull out your CDR slides for today and also the handouts. If you have a really, really large file, that's the best place to go. So drop it in there, send a link in through ENV. Okay, so we know where to pull that stuff and she can slide it over. So you don't necessarily have to cut it up.
I'm sorry.
And you know what I'm talking about.
So this is complicated and a work in process, and we really don't want to let anything slip. So Box is great. However, the problem with Box is we don't get notification. So what we require you to do is when you submit something through ENV Reviews, you have to notify us that we've uploaded it into Box. Also the problem with that is we have to create a Box account for you, which means you're going to have to email us to ENV Reviews and say, I've got a really huge EA coming in. I'd like to submit it. Can you create an account for me? I will go into Box, create a folder specifically for, the city of Houston or Harris County, whatever it is, and then let you know when it's there. You'll go upload your document into Box, and then you'll send another email to envreviews.com just saying, this EA has been uploaded. And I'll confirm the receipt, and I'll send you a response back. So, we have the document, you're in our queue, and then we'll take it from there. Again, hopefully in another month this all goes away and we're using Tiger, but until then, that's our workaround for using large documents.
It's actually a really nice system too. If I can figure it out, because I'm old, then anybody can. Trust me. Alrighty. So again, to make that comment about being sure to protect any kind of sensitive applicant data. Okay, that's been like a big thing that's been coming out there. So again, don't drop people's names. Which, if anybody ever went to any of my old trainings, I always hated having names on there anyway. Surely you don't have a social security number on there, but who knows? Maybe they put the last 4 digits or something. Don't do that. No house numbers, no street numbers. You could say Clay Street, but you're not going to give us an actual address. Hello, Tiger, come here. All righty, we're going to give you a little taste of Tiger. We're not going deep into it, but it is going to be a taste. Flip that to make it go forward.
Okay, let me see. Right here?
Yeah, he's right there.
Okay.
So
All
it's
right.
bigger.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christy Morris. I've been working with GLO General Land Office Environmental Team with Tiger. And over the next few weeks, the General Land Office will be accepting, as Jill had said, and Cynthia, environmental documents through the Tiger portal system. We have some entities and subrecipients using the back end of Tiger to submit site specifics for their housing program. That will stay as is. This will be geared more towards like infrastructure and other. Yeah. You saw that? Okay. That's and acquisitions. Okay. In order to use the Tiger portal system, you must have an account set up in Tiger.
Can you all hear her? Okay,
Sorry, I'm
just
kind of
making sure.
soft-spoken. Yeah, let me know if I'm not loud enough.
Go closer to the mic.
Like this? Okay. Could I get a show of hands of how many people have portal access or have logged onto the Tiger portal? Can't? Okay. All right, well, what you'll want to do before this process is implemented, and like I said, we'll have an upcoming training in the next few weeks, you want to contact your primary contact or authorized representative to set up an account with your entity.
If you don't know who that is, you can contact your general land office grant manager, and they will put you in touch with who that is in your agency. Contracts, and we have to emphasize this, contracts must be signed prior to submitting documents through the Tiger portal. Would that be a fair statement?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
You can only do this for live projects that have a GLO grant member.
Okay. The general land office will give everyone a go-ahead prior to submitting documents in Tiger. Okay. This is just a very brief overview of what you can expect when you're in the Tiger portal. The portal, you're gonna first locate your project. I don't know how to use the pointer. And then once you locate your project, you're gonna upload your document. Like I said, this is very, very brief overview. Okay, and then an SOP will be distributed in a few weeks, and then we will reach out to all of you to do a formal training. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. If I can't answer the question, I will connect you with Tiger Help, or I will seek answers for you for Tiger Help. Short and sweet. Thank you all.
And like I said, that was just a taste, because again, they're doing the enhancements and they're creating the rest of the development for this. So we can't actually take you on live. She only had those couple of screenshots. And again, this is in the slide packet that you downloaded, so you'll be able to blow that up and take a closer look at it. I know the screen's not the greatest. I mean, it's pretty big, but still it looks kind of faded to me, so I'm just kind of that way. Notice it says the second half. That's because we're up to the second half.